Welcome to another edition of the Building Your Career podcast. Today I'm joined by Rainey, a very special guest that I've been looking forward to having on the pod for a while now. So I think, the topics are quite interesting here because it's all about the different paths available for you in the construction industry. And Rainey is someone who has had a really interesting career path. So I suppose, Rainey, if you could just give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself, who you are, and then we can launch straight into your background and where you've come from.
Thank you very much. And Dom, thank you so much for the invite. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So I'll start with how I've started out in working in construction. And I think I'll start with chapters because it's easier for me to start with my job titles. And I'm very conscious to say that there's a way in entry into construction. There's many ways you can get into this industry. I started out a bit more of a traditional way. So that's through university and did a civil engineering degree and then moved on into working as a main contractor. So I think I say my career is more in chapters. So I started out doing the basics. So that's understanding how construction works from the ground upwards. So being a site engineer, understanding the widgets around how to build and then building on curiosity and critical thinking. So I think when you start off, and I give advice to anyone, is take that job that makes you understand everything. And I think a lot of people go into this with wanting a certain sort of sector or a certain chapter to go into. So being in accounting or being in the marketing or being in an engineer, I would take a role that can give you a breadth of all that experience at the start, because it's all data points to know what you like and what you don't like. And when I started, I was in a sort of a graduate program. So I started as a site engineer, then worked in the sort of the QS, so the commercial side, and then worked in structures. So that was more on like building the actual technical side and temporary works. And I had like a moment really on, well, what next? And for me, I like the whole idea of like connecting the dots with people, having the kind of cross-pollination of ideas coming to the table. So project management was something that I kind of leaned into and made that my anchor on. This allows me to be critical, but come from a way of understanding. I think people sometimes when they challenge from, oh, I just want to ruffle the feathers, but actually I came from being critical in my thinking so that I wanted to be a place of understanding as opposed to just sort of, right, why is that? So I think that's helped me, and being curious has been one of my two things, and moved into move into growth. So business development and sector leadership, so account leadership. And now fast forward to today, I'm working in sports as a senior project manager, working on a well-known stadium. So yeah, that's a whistle-stop tour really of the chapters so far.
Awesome. And I think, it's one of them. I think some interesting points touched on there. I think one of the really interesting points is kind of starting off and then getting to the point where you're aware of the commercial side of the construction industry as well. How much things are going to cost, what the cost implications are of certain types of designs as well, which is, advice that I always give to people is even if your company's not giving you the experience of being involved in that, have some sort of curiosity around that as well, because to step away from that kind of more junior level into a more senior level, it's always about those kind of cost implications really. But I suppose for you, what have you found to be, first of all, the different options that were kind of available for you in the different career paths, just so you can give some advice to people, and also what would you say would be the key things that you learned along the way that you would advise other people to kind of get involved in, or certainly learn about or be intrigued about from a earlier or a more junior perspective?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's so easy to take your job title or your responsibilities and just sit with that and sort of think that it will, when you're a bit more senior, you'll get to understand these sort of avenues, particularly around commercially. How are you going to make this project viable? How are you going to make a margin? How are you going to make sure there's a risk and opportunities that have been managed? And so what I'd say to someone, myself really in the early years, is ask lots of questions with the people that you're sitting around. You'll be really surprised having a quick coffee conversation with someone around, could you tell me what you've been up to today? Or what's your biggest challenge that you faced this week? Will give you so much insight into know how that person is operating, and also an opportunity for you to support and help. So I think it goes back to, don't just think that because you're doing your role that you just sit there and right, okay, in another year, when I have my performance review in the mid-year or the end of the year, I will then ask for more responsibility, or I'll ask to do more, and then I'll learn more. I'd say do it in sort of like little doses during the week. Give yourself a goal of like every week I want to speak to one person I haven't spoken to before, or read a document that you haven't read or you've been circulated, but it's not your responsibility. But you've read that document, and then you can go to that person that's the author and ask a question, because that gives you notice and that gives you visibility to know that you are beyond your job title. You're actually elevating your curiosity and feeding your knowledge. I always talk about my digest of books and reading, and I do it in thirds, really. One third is just enjoying books, just like storybooks, all sorts of genres, and then one third is sort of critical thinking, so that's like not leadership but sort of mindset growth. And then the third one I kind of digest is a perspective that's not my common perspective, so keeping it something that is almost opposite to what I think. So, for instance, I give an example.
Yep.
I work in project management right now, and I do a lot of sort of like programs, and I talk to lots of people to bring a goal forward, to push everything forward, essentially. But one thing I don't do enough of, or have kind of science set on, is some of the mechanical and electrical elements of the work. And it's so easy to go, I don't know that, so I'm not going to touch it, and I'm just going to make sure the expert in the room understands it. Instead, what I've done is I've taken the high level understanding of that sector, of that area, and taken 3 things that I can understand, and asked that person to sit down with me and say, could you explain this to me? So I understand it in the room, so I can question and challenge and help you to drive on your program. So taking that step back, it goes back to sort of building on your curiosity, and it has to be something you actively do all the time, as opposed to in chapters in your performance or the end of your kind of year review.
Yeah, I think that's very, very wise advice. I think, it's just that natural internal curiosity, as well as, asking the questions and not just sitting with yourself and kind of mulling it over yourself. But yeah, you're never going to know everything. You're never going to be the expert at everything, but there's other people there that you can, feed off. And also, don't be afraid to ask the question. Most people are absolutely happy to just sit down and kind of go through things with you. So yeah, I think, yeah, the M&E side of things is quite an interesting topic as well. Is there any other kind of things that you've learned about previously that you felt like really helped to kind of boost your career then?
Yeah, I think that makes me learn, but I talk about the idea that I work in construction, but I've also taken volunteering roles as well along the way. If I'm being honest, when I did my first one, and I was a governor for a school locally, I probably sat there and thought I wasn't really ready. That's like 6-7 years ago. At the time, I just had my first child, so I was like, okay, I'll give this a go. See what this kind of role entails. And it was really interesting, because the insight around how to run a school, there's the running of the school and the operations, there's the health and safety, there's the curriculum for the school, there is the future proofing for what the children need to learn in the next 5 years, is the budget from the Department of Education. All of those things, I was sitting around a table of people trying to help and understand and govern. Any advice to anyone is, don't wait until you're ready. Go and have a go. Go and put yourself forward for one of these roles, because you'd be really surprised how much it helps you elevate in your current position in your career, because you'll end up becoming a different perspective and have a different viewpoint and have more confidence, because you're not driven by the ecosystem in your company or where you are now. They don't know you in that realm. That it's a very different environment, and you can learn from that and learn from others. So, and that obviously broadens your network. And actually, the other thing I've started doing is I've started writing and having. I've had loads of ideas around construction and what could be in the future, and I have various conversations with people all the time. And so sort of recently I started sort of sharing them on a newsletter called Build Bold, and what I see, feel, hear and build every month. And initially I thought, who's going to want to read this? It's sort of I'm almost a bit nervous about sharing it. But what was interesting, what it's done personally, it's it's helped me really journal and write about my thoughts and about what I actually think and how I communicate that to the world. So I'm almost, the people that follow is almost irrelevant, because what it's doing is giving me a great practice around systems thinking and thinking, right, I want to write a piece every month. I want it to be engaging, but I also want to know, is it being communicated clearly what I'm thinking and feeling and hearing every month? And so I'm not saying everyone has to do this. What I'm saying is, if you give yourself a task, it really improves that muscle. And you can be in any part of your career in construction. It doesn't have to be when you're too senior. I think everyone has a unique point of view. And there's so many ways now you can share that on various platforms in construction.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you were saying some really interesting stuff about the volunteer work that you do as well, where, people would ask you kind of what you do for work, and it was less about kind of job title. So I suppose I was just quite curious because you touched on a really interesting point in terms of it's for you, it's kind of less about job title, more about what you're actually doing. So can you just give us a little bit of insight on that?
Yeah. I'm gonna put a caveat to say I was chasing job title early in the years, because I think it's easy to say that when you are just starting out and you're seeing other people get a promotion, and you start very naturally, you start comparing yourself. And I have done that. I'm not going to say I've definitely done that in my early years, and I still do have to almost have a check-in with myself to go, well, why am I not as senior if I compare with the peers that I'm around? But what I started realizing as I started chasing these job titles is I was starting to veer towards something I wasn't passionate about. So when I talk about I don't lead my job title, I am now leading the way I see in the world. So I kind of leading in the way that, and this is what goes back to sort of writing in my newsletter blog, and then having a charity that I'm vice chair for called Smart Work. And that is helping women get back into work after having a long period away. And it helps them through coaching and, an outfit you're given to feel more empowered. So now I lead with, well, what do I want to do more of in terms of build purpose and drive change? And that's helped me have various roles now. So that's working in construction, in sports and stadia, which I love sport and I love the impact it has on communities and the individual, particularly when it comes to performance. And I love the idea an athlete's mindset is brilliant. They are rigorous and have grit and then aligned with their passion. I think that's just phenomenal. So to be able to provide assets for that, that's just amazing. But then the other two around the charity about helping women get back into work. So it's not necessarily giving them, money or a short-term solution. It's empowering them to be giving them purpose back into the workplace. And then the third one is a thought leadership. So part of a think tank called the Centre for New Midlands, where we're helping shape the prosperity of the Midlands area. So how I can give my viewpoint and my perspective into that and help drive how we connect all of the Birmingham city together to help bring growth and prosperity. It's not, I can't give you a job title, Dom, and that's fantastic, isn't it? Because it's like, really so what I want to do is help people feel like you can do that too. I haven't got a secret sauce. I've just gone in and gone, right, I love doing this. I want to do more. And, can I help here? And so over time, it's compounded to having these particularly three avenues, which has allowed me to sort of show up in the world that I want to. So, yeah, so I hope that's given you a bit of a raw insight into it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I just feel hope everyone can find that there's so many opportunities out there. If you just go and beaver away and ask, and people are willing to. How can I help? Is my favorite space.
Yeah. And that also clearly goes to show that it's not just transferable skill sets inside of the construction industry. These can go to transferable skill sets outside and your passion and things like that in terms of charity work, or the communication skills that you've learned can easily be transferred to stuff that you're passionate about outside of work hours as well.
Agreed. What's wonderful is the amount of people you can are curious about my role in construction and go, well, tell me, that's so cool that you are building something that's tangible and you'll see a tangible difference in it. You're building something that someone else is going to use. And what's hopefully organically, you're encouraging others to look at this industry as a palatable and an inviting sector that everyone can be involved in just by being in different rooms that not necessarily a construction. I'm hoping it helps elevate construction is for everyone, and and then we're all inviting everyone to come and join us
Awesome.
in this.
And I might put you a little bit on the spot here, but I'm just
Go
thinking
on.
about construction projects that you've worked on. But is there any construction projects that you're super proud of, or that you really were passionate about, kind of
Oh,
helping to deliver?
it's
There's probably so many to pick
there
from.
is so many. I'm going to give you my top three.
Yeah.
So my first one, just because it was the first time I'd stepped out in my hard hat and boots on the Olympics 2012
Yeah.
on the Broxbourne Whitewater Rafting Canoeing Centre, and I mention this a lot because it was the first time I was able to really stand there and go, I'm here. I'm actually making a difference, even though mine was all underground. It was all the pipe work and all the ducks, very glamorous. But it was my first moment of being, employed, getting paid, and doing something that I'd studied very hard for, and seeing that come from ground, and then being able then to see it on TV and also be part of it through some of the ceremony stuff. It's probably one of my kind of, early moments. So that's that one.
Hmm.
And the second one, funny enough, is not as glamorous if you look at it from an outside point of view. I worked for a period in the water sector on clean water for a tier 1 contractor, and I was a site agent for this job. And it wasn't necessarily the physical project that was probably interesting. What I found amazing in that role was how important clean water is and the significance around upgrading that asset. So clean water site, just keep it simple, there's lots of huge valves, and there are clean water needs to be maintained all the time, right? Can't have if someone's putting a kettle on at 8 7 o'clock in the morning, there's no way you can have a down flow. It's got to be,
Right.
it's got to make sure everything is working in function order. But what the spirit of that team was so inspiring, because everyone knew what their mission was, and everyone was working in the same direction to make sure that those upgrades were done on time and on delivered on time, and there was no outage, there was no delays, because obviously significant if it is. Being part of that team, I feel really happy about, because it was like, wow, we did it, and it was done in such a seamless way, but the hard work gone and the preparation to get to that point was the collective effort of the team. So that's the second one. Third
Nice.
one, I would say, I could say where I'm working at the moment is pretty cool. I've just started out as a senior project manager on a stadium in Birmingham. And one of the interesting things about this job is, I think I underestimated, and we spoke about this earlier, about the newness fatigue and how tired I've been the past couple of months to get up to speed with the amount of amazing stuff going on in sport, particularly on this stadium and football ground. And it's wonderful to see the collective people working towards that mission to get the upgrades done. And I think the excitement I get, and I love football as well, so I think it's double-edged sword for me, because I love football and I love sport and I love being part, it's just like, it's amazing. What I think, I'm excited to see the end result, but what's great to see all the hard work gone in to make sure that the fan and match day experience is not compromised, but the upgrades are done in such a way that it's seamless. And that takes preparation, takes determination, and that takes team effort. And what I've seen so far, and then the team I'm with, who say, have been phenomenal to support me to get back into this role in understanding the technical aspects. But what's been brilliant is the autonomy to be able to make some really, really kind of fundamental decisions with the team I've been brought into has been great too. And I think we're going back to compounding all my experiences up until this day to be at this moment, is that it's kind of all that willpower and grit. And I talk about grit quite a bit with my friends, because it's seen as, it sounds very like you're suffering. When you say grit, you're like, oh, I'm suffering. I see it as more like a willpower and alignment, actually. And that as soon as you get the grit to fit ratio right, it doesn't matter if it's hard, because you're enjoying it, and it's something that it goes back to your alignment and purpose and drive. So when it is difficult, you're going to dig deeper, because the grit to fit ratio is there. And so when the highs are the highs and the lows and the lows, because any job has both highs and lows. You're not going to get one job that fits all. So that has helped me kind of refine where I am at this moment in time. So yeah, grit to fit ratio is bang on at the moment. So recommend everyone to take a reflection on that.
Awesome, Rainey. Well, yeah, it's been so insightful. It's been awesome to hear your background, some of the projects that you've worked on, some really practical advice there as well. But yeah, thank you so much for being a guest. I've
You're very
really
welcome.
enjoyed this episode.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, take care, Rainey.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.